Can I get a
Park Tour?
Just like last year with Wish, I would like to once again thank Disney for releasing their newest movies much later in the UK than they do everywhere else, therefore incentivizing me to not give them my money. It truly warms my heart to see them finally implementing consumer-friendly practices into their business strategies. This act of generosity almost made me forget that I was watching Moana 2. You read the title, so you probably have an idea of how I feel about this movie, and one thing you've probably gathered from all the reviews so far is that this movie was originally not supposed to be a thing. You see, Disney wasn't very happy that their animated movie celebrating their 100 years of being a thorn in the industry's backside was completely neglected by audiences, who were sick of them doing the same tricks over and over, and releasing what was essentially a greatest hits compilation of everything people were tired about in their movies. So instead of learning the correct lesson from this, recuperate, scale back on the slop, make a new IP and freshen up their approach, they darted their eyes across the room to the people making a Moana series for Disney Plus for the past 4 years, struck a devilish grin, and then gently placed their hand on their shoulders before telling them, "Hey, kid. Good luck." Now, I can only fathom how distressing it must have been to be told the series you were working on for 4 years was being converted into a big-budget theatrical movie, completely destroying the pacing and story that was there previously as you struggled to stitch everything together to create a cohesive narrative while also having to crunch to make sure the animation is at a reputable standard for theatrical release in an unreasonable amount of time. But the result can't be that bad, right?
You ever get the feeling something really bad is about to happen?
This video is not just a review of Moana 2 and moaning about how bad it is. I also want to emphasize badly how much this movie should not exist, and how it always feels like the movie hates itself for existing. It doesn't feel like a real movie that I spent time skipping through gambling advertisements to watch. Overall, I would say the movie is painfully mid. Hey, like the literal definition of middle of the road. But it's the fact that each aspect of it is mid that solidifies my stance on calling it an outright bad movie. This movie is not the shit, it's not even the fart, and here's why. I broke my streak, goddammit. So first we should talk about the movie itself. What makes Moana 2 so unbearable that it's enough to make a grown man kill himself? Well, let's go more in depth with the whole "this was originally supposed to be a TV show and it's incredibly obvious if you spend more than 20 minutes watching the movie" thing. Now, I don't know how long each episode of the Moana Disney Plus series was supposed to be. I'm assuming 20 minutes each because that's the standard. But regardless, as early as the first official trailer, it was really obvious that the movie was poorly stitching together different episodes of the show and trying to make it work with a theatrical runtime, and the result is embarrassing. You know how it felt like a million different things were happening in the trailers? It felt like there were multiple plot points that would have been great if they were on their own and actually fully explored, like in a TV show, but that they were all mushed together and that the film felt like it was designed not by committee but by a dartboard. While I can say for certain that the trailer did an excellent job at marketing the film and giving us an accurate first impression, because that's exactly what it's like. It's so easy to tell which part of the movie was its own episode, mostly from the different set pieces, and it honestly just makes me wonder what a Moana TV show that actually got fleshed out and not rushed out the door would be like. You know, the project that you canned after 4 years of work. Moana is not a movie that comes to mind when I think of Disney movies I want sequels for, but that doesn't necessarily mean we can never see this world or these characters again and not have something new to say about them. I mean, they must have realized that too, that's why the TV show was in production for so long, and the format of the characters sailing around and coming across all sorts of oddities and wonders at sea does sound like it'd be entertaining, but unless you really put the work in, translating all of that into a movie, a poorly stitched together one at that, isn't gonna work out, especially when the guys responsible for making Moana as great as it was, John Musker and Ron Clements, the two people responsible for some of the greatest Disney movies ever made, are nowhere to be found. Makes sense for a TV show, but the fact they weren't brought on when it was turned into a movie is all kinds of whack. I wish there was anything here that particularly stood out or justified this film's existence, but that's the thing. Moana 2 is a poorly disguised retread of the original movie. It hits most of the same beats without a heart to go with them, which explains why this movie has nothing new to say or does anything interesting with its characters. Moana is the exact same person here that she was at the end of the first movie. She doesn't have an arc, or at the very least what the movie tries to pass off as an arc is so forgettable and not impactful that she may as well have had no attempt at an arc whatsoever. Maui is the same here as he was in the first movie too, and I'm starting to think that half the reason for this show being turned into a movie was to find a way to save Dwayne Johnson's dying star power. There are some new characters along for the ride this time, and you can sense that corners were cut with them whenever they're on screen because they are not important at all, and it feels like if, again, they had a TV show, they could have been fleshed out and people would actually have a reason to care about them. They add nothing to the movie. And look, I get I'm the pacing guy. I'm always banging on about the pacing this or the pacing that, because I believe pacing is the most important part of a story. If you have good pacing, slow or fast, that matches the story you're trying to tell, you can carry the film or series on vibes or enjoyment for casual viewers, since they'll often not notice the more glaring flaws. This is not the most eloquent way to describe this, I'm sure. I'm I'm the guy who made 6 videos about the Loud House, leave me alone. Moana 2's pacing is wretched, and exactly what you would expect from a movie made in these conditions and being salvaged from scrapped episodes meant for television. It is borked to hell and back. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm repeating the made-for-television critique a lot, but what else can you really say? There's a post-credits scene in this movie that tries to set up another sequel by bringing Tamatoa back, so I'm sure Shea Frillis is happy and good for him, but at the same time, come on, man. The only positive I see here is that if they're setting up a theatrical sequel, then it'll at least be made as a theatrical sequel and won't be cobbled together from a dead TV show. Get Musker and Clements back on board, and boom, you can have something decent here. It's not gonna happen, but the possibility inspires joy. I think we can all use some joy right now. Follow me on Blue Sky Cough Cough. And continuing Disney's streak of somehow f***ing up their music, one of the most iconic things about their movies, Moana 2's soundtrack makes me feel like a disappointed father. The first Moana had an incredible soundtrack. I don't think there's a single song here that I didn't like. Even You're Welcome was good, and I can't stand The Rock. I don't know what's been up with Disney's music lately. It feels like ever since Encanto, they've fallen off a cliff without Lin-Manuel Miranda. But since when was he ever needed in the past to produce some absolute banger music for these movies? Hell, even when they do get Miranda back, he sometimes just produces trash. What gives? This soundtrack is very evidently trying to mimic Miranda's style, and it fails because there's no soul. It's like you asked an AI to create a Disney song for you, which is the exact same critique I gave Wish last year.
Watch out, world, here I are!
Now, nothing in Moana 2 reaches the same depths of depravity of Peep the Name, I'm Magnificent, but that's the thing. The music isn't even bad, it's just forgettable, bland, white noise. You can replace it with a Not Like Us funk remix and it'd have the exact same reaction. It's the kind of music you put on while you're writing your math teacher's name in the Death Note you bought at an anime convention. The final act of this movie does have some intensity to it that was missing previously, actually getting me to care about what was going on for a little bit, but it's the only glimmer of hope I can find in this sad movie. Not even the animation is worth writing home about, because while yes, at a glance it looks pretty good, it's nothing above what the original movie did 8 years ago. In fact, I'd say Moana 1 looks better, because the characters are just more expressive. It feels like they're alive. Moana 2 likely had the animators crunching in order to get the movie to look like it had the Disney movie polish, but that's harder to do for the actual character animation and facial expressions, which just don't hold a candle to how good they were in the first movie. Hell, as much as I think Wish is an ugly looking film, it had far more expressive character animation than this. Nothing about this movie's plot or characters justifies its existence. None of the songs are memorable, and I'll be shocked if any of them end up charting by the end of the week. The animation is disappointing, and the film shouldn't have been a film in the first place. And with all of that said, there's one final reason why this movie should not exist. As I'm sure many of you know, Disney and Pixar kicked up a bit of a storm earlier this year by stating they would be focusing on already established IP for the foreseeable future, due to many of their original movies flopping. Instead of addressing the elephant in the room being the very poor marketing, and sending most of their movies to Disney Plus anyway, which incentivizes people to not bother with being extorted by theaters just to see their movies a month or two ahead of the Disney Plus premiere, and also their movies just looking like shit to general audiences anyway. Now, Moana 2 is likely going to make a lot of money. Moana has only gotten more popular as the years have gone by, with it being the most popular thing on Disney Plus by a wide margin. This is basically guaranteed Moana 2's success, regardless of how bad it is, which will keep incentivizing Disney to pump out more sequels instead of making something new. And with Moana 2 specifically, this practice gets a bit worrying because now we know they can just take anything being made for television and just shove it out the door as a poorly stitched together movie to make a quick buck. This is a very unlikable business practice, but it's clearly gonna work out for them, and I'm worried that other studios are gonna follow their lead like they usually do. Moana 2 should not exist. Not just because it's a bad movie, a mid-movie, a movie that doesn't justify its existence, or a movie that was cobbled together from a cancelled TV show, but because it existing and succeeding is gonna poorly influence the industry in so many ways, potentially leading to an all-new age of slop Frankenstein abomination movies that should have stayed as TV shows. At least Disney direct-to-DVD sequels were direct-to-DVD sequels. This is playing in theaters. This is of course the worst-case scenario. Things could also not turn out that way. But frankly, I'm tired of hoping for the best with Hollywood these days. Actual quality films and television are going to be hard to come by soon unless the entire industry collapses. If you're watching this video, don't watch Moana 2 in theaters or on Disney Plus when it inevitably premieres there. If you really want to watch it, then just pirate it for God's sake. Okay, I'm nearly out of time here today, so instead of writing more doom and gloom bullshit about the state of the industry, I'm gonna list some animated movies that I've seen this year that you should watch legally. If possible, of course. If you can't do that, then don't let me stop you from saying sailing the high seas. Transformers 1, I was fairly late to the party on this one unfortunately, and that's a shame because that one guy on Twitter who single-handedly carried this movie's marketing on his back was fucking cooking. I've never really liked any of the Transformers movies I've seen. I'm not even that big of a Transformers fan as much as I respect it and its legacy, but Transformers 1 was electrifying. If that conclusion doesn't stir at least a little bit of emotion in you, then look down at your dick to see if it's transparent, brother, because you might be dead. The Wild Robot is the win that DreamWorks desperately needed this year because my god. I'm still debating if I love this movie more than Dragons 1 and 2, but the fact that I'm even debating that internally is enough to show how much I adored this movie. One of the best movies of the year and a legitimate contender for the best thing DreamWorks have ever made. Look Back, while definitely on the shorter side given it's an adaptation of a one-shot manga, is one of the most emotionally devastating movies I've seen all year. If you are a creative person in any way, artist, writer, songwriter, anything, you owe it to yourself to watch this movie and try not to bawl your eyes out. It's also one of the most gorgeously animated things I've seen all year, so it has that going for it too. Anyway, that's about all the time I have. F Moana 2, this movie shouldn't exist. I enjoyed Red 1 more than this. Play Yakuza.